Hello, my name is Kerrioth, and this is part one of a two-part thing where we are going to take a look at some models from Raging Heroes. Raging Heroes have very kindly sent this stuff over. As always, this isn't a sponsored thing. They've simply sent me some stuff, and we're going to take a look at it. So what we'll do is we will take a look at the models out of the box. So I've just opened this stuff up, I've just taken it out of the packet. We're going to see what it's like in terms of what's required for preparation, kind of just general cast quality, flashing, that kind of thing. The sort of thing that you generally do tend to look at when you open a especially resin model for the first time. So we're going to take a look at the stuff they've sent. I'm going to leave it to air out for a couple of days, give it all a good wash, and then put them together, and we will take a look at the completed put together models in a second video, follow up to this one. For that second video, we will also be giving away that. So I have two of these, two sister Ardannas, and one of them will be given away in the next video. So yeah, come back if you want to win one. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's start with Sister Ardanna. So there is there's three sort of HQ or character models, and there is a Skinner Command Squad from the Lust Elves range, which I have in front of me, and we'll start with the sister, because that's what we decided to start with. So there's, in a way, a little bit of inconsistency in terms of how these things have arrived, but I don't think it's necessarily a problem. So this is how she has arrived. Some of it has broken off the kind of chunk on the bottom. I don't really know the best word to describe that, which was worrying for a sec, because whenever that happens, I get concerned about losing bits when they kind of come out of the pack. But nothing's been lost. Everything is still here, which is exactly what you want. Also, do not be worried about the end of the sword there. It's fine. The sword kind of sticks into the ground. Don't worry about it. It's not missing. It's supposed to be like that. So the actual quality is nice. There's a good amount of detail, and the detail has come out really quite nicely. On this one particularly, there's not a huge amount of cleanup that I think needs to be done. Obviously, it needs to be washed, but something that they do that is very helpful, and I do quite like this, especially for those who are not familiar with working with resin, having this is quite good. There is a little card that you get with literally all of this stuff. A bit hard to see because of the light, but the gist of it is you get a full-on little instructional sheet with every single one of these that is basically how to clean your resin. Because if you don't clean your resin before you mess with it, like if you don't clean it before you stick it together, if you don't clean it before you paint it, you do not have a good time. Let's put it that way. So they point out that it requires preparation before painting. Something that is interesting is the suggestion that you leave the miniatures out of the bags for 5 to 7 days, so that any release agent that might have penetrated the cast will evaporate. The longer you leave them out, the better the results. So I recommend that you let your figures air out as soon as you receive them. I received these today. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do exactly what they've said in the instructional thing. I'm going to leave them for 5 to 7 days, and then we'll put them together having been cleaned. They tell you how to clean them, specifically mentioning brands that are good for it, which again is good. There's also on the other side the how to prime resin as well. So to be honest, if you haven't messed with resin before, having that kind of step-by-step instruction, definitely a good thing, because resin is definitely more tricky to deal with than plastic. But yeah, the actual miniature itself, there's a lot of nice detail on this one. There's a little bit of cleanup required. Like, as I'm looking at it, I'm kind of seeing bits that are going to have to be filed or just tidied up a little bit. For instance, there's a little chunk right on there that prevents the leg from sitting quite straight. So if we put that on there, you can kind of see there's a bit of a gap, but that gap is caused by just a little bit of cleanup being required on that section there. The detail in the face and the hair is really nice and will not require any cleanup at all, which is genuinely really good. If there's one thing I can't stand, it's having to clean fine details on resin, because it's just, you slip a little bit with the scalpel or the file and you're in for a bad time. Having said that, there's a little bit of flashing that is going to have to be taken off the backpack, which is going to be a little bit trickier. But luckily it's all on the edges. Inevitably, I can't help but compare this stuff to Forge World, simply because Forge World is where the majority of my resin has come from. So, still, in comparison to Forge World, this isn't that bad. It's very light flashing. It's not particularly heavy. It's not particularly... it's not, like, well attached. In fact, as I was taking this stuff out of the bag, there was a little bit on this backpack that kind of disappeared immediately. So I'm not too concerned about that. Again, the detail is really nice. It will require a clean, but I have to say that, especially on certain bits of this, it's not particularly greasy. It doesn't look like there's a huge amount of residue on a lot of this stuff, which is good. For the most part, there is one of them that does seem to have quite a bit of residue still on it, but the others, yeah, for the most part, they're pretty clean. It's not bad. So yeah, there's some nice details on these models anyway. I quite like some of these. Like you can see there's a bit of flashing that's going to be taken off the, I was going to say the dog's head. I think it's like a dog, a gargoyle dog bird. There's probably a genuine name for it, but, you know. So yeah, there's a little bit under the head there. But again, that's, given to what I'm used to, that's not really a problem. Like, and again, it's in a place that is fairly unobtrusive. Like, you'd be hard pressed to mess up taking that off. And so there are some more fiddly bits to this which are going to be a bit more tricky. So the arms are a lot more delicate, they're a lot more fiddly. There is a bit of flashing to be taken off there, and I have to admit I'm not looking forward to taking that chunk of resin off where it meets the elbow. That's going to be a bit awkward, but that unfortunately is one of the dangers of working with this stuff. It's very difficult to like fully go, oh, this is terrible, because I've seen so much worse. And actually, the point where this stuff is joined, it doesn't look like it's too bad to get off. So you have to be careful, but I don't think that's not a deal breaker. That's just gonna require a bit more care and attention than just grabbing a pair of pliers, not pliers, the other things. The things that you cut with, the clippy things. Probably just call them clippers. So yeah, it's going to be tricky, but that's not too bad. So I do like this model particularly anyway. It's got frankly a nice Living Saint Sisters of Battle feel, which is perfect if you ask me. Yeah, a couple of different weapons. All in all, quite nice. I do like the detail down the bottom of the robe as well. There's some nice touches on this one that, yeah. And I mean, if you look at like the torso, it's, the detail on that is fine, and there's like no cleanup required on like the main body of this one. It does look a little more shiny under the light, but to make sure I'm picking everything up properly, I'm using a light like directly over the models onto this kind of dark blue background. So it does look shiny under the light. It looks shinier under the light than it actually is, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's Sister Ardanna. I'll just sweep her over to the side. Let's take a look at. I tell you what, let's do a complete contrast. So this is Mistress Slithiss, who's an excruciat. You can read that. I can't. I'll be honest. I really like this model. It's all kinds of creepy in all the best ways. Now I have to admit, this is going to take a lot more in the way of cleanup. There's a lot more residue on this one, as you can probably see straight away. There's a lot more residue, and there is significantly more in the way of like extra resin that's going to have to be cleaned off this one. This is a much more tricky prospect. I'll say that I think Sister Ardanna came out a bit better when it came to these particular casts, because you can see there's quite a bit of extra flashing and stuff on these. To be honest, none of it is particularly heavy. I will say that there's more than I'd like, but none of it is like. it's not huge chunks. It's quite light. Like if you can do that, if you can touch it and it flakes away, then it's not too much of an issue. The only thing you have to worry about when there's as much as there is here is you can lose some of the definition on the edge of the model, like on the detail, which is something to watch out for, because you'll need to file it down a little bit or kind of scrape away a little bit, and you're kind of occasionally in danger of kind of losing that definition on the edges. But if it was really thick and chunky, I'd be really unhappy, but it's not. It's not too bad. And the actual detail on a lot of this stuff is absolutely fine. Like there's flashing around the edges, but the actual, as you can see, the detail on the main part of the legs, the kind of skirt thing here, there's not really any that needs to be cleaned off the main bulk of it, which kind of suggests to me that it's a little bit of a pain, but it shouldn't be too difficult to sort out the rest. There's, as you can see, there's a fair bit on here as well. It's very much around the edges, but I mean, tell you what, let's do a little bit of live surgery and just kind of poke a little bit. Yeah, that's not going to be difficult at all. I know that probably looks very blasé, but you know, it's fine, don't worry about it. Yeah, it's so thin and so lightly attached, that's not going to take very much to get off. A little bit concerned about this area here. That's a little more than I'd like, and it's a little thicker than I'd like as well, although once some of the supporting stuff is kind of peeled away like that, hopefully it shouldn't be too much of a pain to get rid of. So not quite as good on the cast for this one. Still salvageable. Like there's nothing, I don't think this isn't something that you'd necessarily need to send back. I don't think it is fixable. And to be honest, I've found personally that sometimes just washing this stuff, you can get rid of quite a bit of, especially the lighter bits of flashing, seem to just kind of come away under drying and tends to leave the detail pretty much how it is. I mean, even that bit there, it's a bit thicker, but it's not completely unworkable. So there's a significant chunk there, but it tapers off quite a bit towards the edge, so hopefully that won't be too bad. And in fact, yeah, that's tricky, but should be okay. That's going to be the one to watch. I think of all of these, that is going to be the one where once we put the model together, it'll be the closest between kind of tricky and not doable. But we'll see. Yeah, to be honest, the model itself, I really like. The style of it is really cool. It's that one there, which it has a very I don't know how to describe it. There's something almost like Zerg-like about it in a way, which I quite like. So yeah, that's Slithiss, and yeah, she's going to take a bit more work. She is going to take some more work, but we'll see how she comes out after drying out and having a bath. You know, let's face it, everyone looks better after a bath, so you never know. And the other character is the Huntress. And she is nice and simple, just on that bit of sprue there. Again, there's some nice detail on this, and again, the detail itself doesn't really require anything in the way of work. There's a bit of flashing going on around here and here. There's a bit round the back, but for the most part, the bits that matter are pretty clean. There is a bit more residue on this one. Slithiss has got quite a bit of residue. Like it feels kind of greasy to the touch, where Ardanna didn't. This one's kind of midway between the two. Not too bad, to be honest, for this one. I don't think this will take much in the way of cleaning before it's serviceable. Yeah, there's not really anything on this that's looking particularly tricky to deal with. Where those are joined, actually doesn't look too bad at all. It's a fairly thick join, but where it is, it's going to be quite easy to get them off there without too much of a problem. I think that should be all right. But yeah, again, I like the detail on this one. This is a model I actually considered for a D&D character at one point, funnily enough. I ended up not using that character, but yeah, I mean, if you look at things like the leg, like the detail on the leg there, and the torso especially, the kind of fanned collar there, the actual detail itself, there's very little, if any, sort of cleanup required. There's a little bridge just there that could do with being sorted, but again, that's very thin, and it's not really impeding any of the detail. So yeah, I think Ardanna and the Huntress, both of those, probably not going to take very much in the way of cleanup before assembly. Slithiss is going to be the one that's most tricky. Like, if you look at that one compared to that, you can see there's a clear difference in terms of how much cleanup is going to be required. That's going to be significant. That is not bad at all. Again, the inevitable comparison to Forge World is that so far 2 out of 3 are not going to take much effort, and usually when I buy stuff from Forge World, 3 out of 3 require considerable effort. And still, the most nightmarish thing I've ever had to put together is easily got to be the Ironclad Dreadnought I got from Forge World, which was so badly cast that it was completely unusable. So, although soaring chunks of resin off the Typhon Heavy Siege tank wasn't fun either. Okay, so we also have the Lust Elves Skinner's Command. Just flatten that out. Which I really like these. They have a very much like a more brutal Dark Eldar feel, as is suggested by the name. But to be honest, I'm genuinely kind of angling towards some sort of strange Slaaneshi cult, because I'd really like to use these for some things. So finding some way to implement them to 40k, some squad or something that would make sense for them, I'd really like to do that's not necessarily Dark Eldar. But yeah, these ones, I like the way these are. These have been packaged / cast, however you want to put it, a bit more than the others, in fact. So let's start with that sprue there. So we've got 2 sets of 2 of these kind of curved delivery packages, and 1 single one. And straight away, these feel newer in terms of how they've been placed, if that makes sense. The detail's nice. The assembly is going to be nice and easy. You can kind of see there that the waists are socketed. So yes, the torsos are attached by a fairly significant chunk of resin, although actually it thins out quite a lot towards the top, so that's not too bad. But a bit of filing, and those should fit into those sockets like nice and easy. They should slot into there pretty well. There's a nice amount of detail on the heads. The way the heads are actually attached to the blocks is sensible. It's kind of right on the neck. It's not too far forward, so it shouldn't affect the masks too much. That one's maybe a little forward, but that's not too bad, to be fair. And as you can see from the back, again, heads are socketed, torsos are socketed. So for the most part, there's like hardly anything that needs doing to these. There's a bit of residue on the bodies, but it's really not that bad. And I have to admit, things like the detail on the back of that, there's like little stitches and things on the back of that, which you can see. The little details of that have actually come out really, really well. I will say that for the most part, the detail on this stuff is really nice. The only one that isn't great is Slithiss on the smaller parts, but the large parts, the detail's still really good. The weapons again are attached in a fairly sensible way. There's a couple of bits that might be a little bit tricky, like there's a bit of a chunk going on there, but depending on the thickness of it, yeah, that's going to be a little tricky to get off, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, so that's one of them. Let's have a look at the other one. And pretty much the same story. The detail looks nice and clear. Torso's attached sensibly again. the way that that's been attached, I really like. That's a very sensible way of doing that, right on the edge and right on the elbow there. That's going to be easy to take off, and it's still going to look really good. That's a very thin weapon, but there's a nice amount of detail on there. There's a little bit of a join at the bottom here that you can see, but again, that's very thin. That's not going to take very much to get off at all. And once again, the heads have been attached in a sensible way. That might be a little bit tricky to sort out, but I'm sure it's fine. Well, I'll let you know when they're put together for the follow-up. Yeah, again, there's some of where the kind of block is attached to the blades on the weapons. There are occasional bits that aren't placed great, but I don't know how. To be honest, I'm not a miniature designer, nor am I an expert in casting, so I don't know if there would even be a better way to do that. I did the air thing where you do like the quotation marks, because I'm just I just collect this shit. I don't make it, so I'm not I'm not an expert in that sort of field. I just know what's easy to get off the sprue and what isn't. So yeah, that looks pretty good. And there are some really nice details that have come out really well that don't require cleanup. That's the thing I'm liking. There are obviously bits that are going to take a bit of fiddling with to get off, but but the actual detailed parts of these models aren't going to require any cleanup. It's just going to be sticking them together, and that's really nice and really helpful. Okay, and then we have the other sprue where the arm came off. The arm actually looks like there's still a bit of resin on the top there, although, nope, I think that's intentional, in fairness. It is, so I will rescind that statement. But yeah, I think that one came off there. So, I mean, where the join parts are, if they're coming off that easily, there's not too much to worry about. You can see a little bit of flashing on the heads there, but that's, again, that's so fine and so delicate, you could scrape that off really easily with a sufficiently sharp and careful blade like that one. And again, good detail on the torso, good detail on the legs. They're attached sensibly. There's a little bit of a bridge there, but it's not going to take much in the way of removal. The arm is a little bit concerning there. That might be a little tricky just because there's a little bit of a bridge there. But having said that, that's really, really thin, and it's only just attached at the tip of that kind of spike. So that hopefully won't take much to do either. So yeah, those are the models that I've been sent by Raging Heroes. As I say, these are fresh out of the packet. They've not been touched. They've not been messed with. They haven't been. None of them has been taken apart or anything. They are straight out of the packs. I will leave them as suggested by the card provided in all of them, which again is a really nice touch. I really like that. I will leave them. I'll leave them out for a few days, somewhere safe where neither of my daughters can find them. I'll leave them out for 5 days. I'll give them a wash. I will assemble them, and I will report back as to the ease of cleanup, the ease of assembly, and show off the finished models. And if you come back for that video, then as I say, I'll be giving away the other sister Ardanna, and you know what? I might give away one of the others as well. In fact, I probably will. So yeah, we will do that when I've put these together. I will report back. Quality-wise, I'm happy. Genuinely, I think the detail is really nice, as I've said over and over again. I don't know how else to phrase it. The fancy bits look good. How how else are you supposed to say that? But yeah, there are some nice touches on these models that have come out really well. Most of the attachments are pretty sensible and shouldn't require much in the way of cleanup or preparation. Slithiss is the one I'm most concerned about because there's a significant amount of extra going on there. That's the one I'm worried about. That is the one that I think is going to be the true test as to just how durable slash good the resin is, because the others I think will come apart and then come together quite easily. This is the one that I think is going to be the real teller. So yeah, we will see what these are like when they are fully assembled. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much, Raging Heroes, for sending this stuff to me. I will, as I say, assemble it, report back, and we'll see what's what. Thank you very much for watching. If you feel like clicking any of the things all over the screen, Patreon video, subscribe, all of that stuff, click it if you like. Don't click it if you don't want to, and I'll see you for the next one. Toodaloo.